Dublin's F104. It is the Strawberry Alarm Clock, and you can cast your mind back, and you can cast your minds back to the sunny villa from a couple of years ago, and there was a standout character, and he was a doctor. And now Dr. Alex George talks to us. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
What a roller coaster life has clearly been, from that to talking to us.
Yes, it has been. It's been a bit of a journey, hasn't it? The last kind of, was it 4 or 5 years? Kind of going from being in the sunshine and doing all that with the TV to now, like, my kind of focus in my life is really about mental health. That's kind of how I want to spend the rest of my life. Really, is campaigning to change provision of services in mental health, educating young people, tackling stigma. It's quite the parallel, really, but life works in funny ways, and you don't always know what you're going to end up doing or what you're going to be focusing on years to come. And I'm very lucky to have a platform to talk about something that I care about so much.
Was that your plan all the time, Alex? You were like, okay, I'm going to get on this really famous show because I don't want to do it, but it'll give me a platform, and then I'll be able to change the world.
No, I never applied to the show. They asked me to go on, and I think one of the editors said that said that I was one of the few, if only Islander, who didn't want to go on the show. It was actually one of my consultants in A&E who persuaded me that I should just go. Said, a week or two in the sun, go experience something different, be back. And I thought I'd be back in A&E in a week or so, and very naively didn't expect to be there the whole time or come out with a huge following. It wasn't, I went back to A&E afterwards, and all the stuff I've done around health has kind of been off the back, really, of just going back to what I wanted to do anyway. So, I haven't really done any of what I'd say maybe traditional kind of Love Island kind of stuff, because it's just not what interests me. Like I follow my interests, my passions, and that's what's led me to doing this now. Really, I'd love to say it was a master plan, but it wasn't really. It is now. I mean, I think that the plan now is very clear. I'm trying to use this, what I have in terms of this platform and the role I have as mental health ambassador, to change policy, to bring funding into mental health. It's definitely a master plan now.
Well, that makes you cooler, Dr. Alex. It makes you much cooler. So you've written this book, A Better Day, Your Positive Mental Health Handbook. This is for children.
Yes. So I wrote A Better Day. Well, I've been writing it the last 2 years, really. And the reason I've written this book is that ultimately, and we must realize that what we educate and how we educate our children in the young years around mental health and their own well-being, their coping mechanisms, their resilience, impacts not only those teenage years, but the rest of their lives. So this book is aimed at 9 to 14-year-olds. And what I tried to do is bring a part of my own experiences and the things I went through at school, the challenges, the highs and lows, as well as the latest science evidence and latest ideas around, resilience development, emotional literacy, so learning to understand the things that you feel, the understanding of physiology as well. So the science behind mental health, there's obviously a huge amount of science behind it. I'm trying to bring that into a really fun book, into a book that I hope, young people will enjoy, will engage with. The response has been incredible so far, and I found out last night that it's gone straight to number 1 in the UK charts for children's non-fiction. So I'm really pleased that the response has been so good, and ultimately this book is, I hope, will make a difference. That is why I've written this book.
And is it easier to get people of that age group on board if they discover your book themselves, or that old situation where a guardian or a parent, here, you should read this, and then they're like, oh, what do you know?
Well, I think it's been quite a mix. I mean, I've heard from parents who've bought it, for the children and put it in front of them, and they've really engaged with it. And other parents of the children have asked, seen the book on the shelf, or have asked their parents if they can get a copy. I mean, it's actually a huge cohort who's really engaged in this book as well, which maybe is surprising or not surprising, is teachers. I mean, I've had so many teachers message me saying, I bought it for the library, the school library, or for the classroom, as it's there as a toolkit, a handbook, really, for young people. I think what we're learning more and more is ultimately, if children are happy and healthy, they're going to be more academically successful. It sounds like a very, very obvious thing to say, but I think it's kind of been lost a little bit amongst everything. We focus so much on academia, and exam grades, that sometimes I think we lose sight of what we're trying to do with schooling. We're trying to build a young person who is able to go out into the world, adapt to new challenges, be able to understand how to learn, how to develop, how to grow, to be resilient to difficult times, to be able to be functional members of a society. Whatever we do, whatever they do, we want them to be able to handle that. And, so schools, a big part of the school and academic process should be learning how to learn, but also learning how to look after yourselves. I find it baffling, if you really think about it, that certainly when I was at school, no one ever talked about what emotional literacy meant, or what feelings were, or talked about important topics. I think like sleep, like financial health. I mean, that's a huge thing. When you leave school to get a job, to earn money, to pay bills, or to live your life, but no one actually teaches you what a mortgage is, or savings, or what is an interest rate, what's an APR, but these are such important things. The number one cause of stress in adults is finances. I mean, we're in a cost of living crisis at the moment, and one of the strongest indicators for increasing suicide rates is financial recession or depression. So, we have to wake up, I think, a little bit, and the approach has to change. And ultimately, I think this book is hard hitting. It is a book that's positive, that's fun and engaging in ways. But I also talk about things like bereavement and loss, which is clearly very important at the moment, with grief being brought to the forefront by the passing of the late Queen. I've also talked about things, about identity. Young children now are expected to know who they are at a very young age. And I think I worry about that. I really worry about it. So I've talked about identity in the book, and encouraging people to not have fixed ideas on who they must be, or who they have to decide what their pronouns are. I think we should allow children to adapt and to grow and to learn, and know that it's fine, whoever and whatever, in whatever way you want to identify yourself or present yourself.
And it's a tough time, from the time you're sort of 9 or 10, as you say, fitting in and finding out what kind of group of friends you're going to have. And then there's also the added thing of the online element, which, we wouldn't have really had when we left school behind us, but now you kind of can't, because your mates are all online. Do you touch on that? Obviously, I'd say you do in the book, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a huge part of what I talk about in the book is how do we use social media, the good sides of social media, to protect children against the more dangerous sides. Let's be absolutely frank here. Young people, you're not supposed to be on a social media platform until, later in your teenage years. Let's be frank here. Most 11, 12-year-olds are on social media platforms. The phone, that I got on my desk in front of me is more powerful and has more technology than the rocket that flew to the moon. And yet we're giving children these phones that have access to everything, without really having any lessons. So I believe that a big part of the school curriculum needs to be around safe use of social media, using it, the amazing powers of social media, but protecting yourself against dangers. And one of the dangers is bullying. Half of all young people right now experience bullying online. Half of all young people. And if you think of a household and you've got 2 or 3 children, I can guarantee that some of those children will be experiencing either directly or indirectly trolling or bullying online. And as you correctly say, when I was at school, I got bullied for a few years. When I got home, it was a safe haven. Now the bullying that happens online is more damaging and more dangerous than the stuff that's happening at school. And we have very little control over it. So, what do we do? Do we ignore the problem, or do we tackle it? Do we give young people, guidance and boundaries and education about how to protect themselves? And I've tried to do that when, there's 2 approaches. I usually talk about a topic in the book. I kind of try and explain as to why this is so important. And then I look at, heads up sections. So giving advice to be proactive, to maybe use social media safely, and some tips. And then also I use lifelines. So if things are going wrong, if you're being bullied online, what do you do? Who do you speak to? How do you deal with that situation? And, ultimately, we can all wish that our children never face hard times, but the reality is that they will. I mean, no one has a life that is free from struggles, and ultimately what we don't want to happen is to lose children to suicide, to have serious eating disorders and things, because it's so hard. I mean, the phone call I had on a sunny Wednesday afternoon to tell me that my brother had taken his own life when we had no idea that he was struggling is not something I'd wish on my worst enemy. And we can all go, well, I can't believe that would never happen to my family, and I hope it never will. But you never know. And, I'm not saying a better day is going to stop anyone from struggling with mental health. Quite the opposite. It's about recognizing and knowing what to do if you do struggle. But I do think it's a real helpful tool to prevent problems happening. And also, if they do happen, to recognize them early and deal with them before you have that horrendous phone call like I did. And that is the stark reality. I mean, in England at the moment, there are there's around 5 to 6 Wembley stadiums full of children who are waiting to be seen by mental health services. Some of those children won't be seen for 2 or 3 years. And I know that picture isn't so dissimilar in Ireland and other parts of the world and Europe as well. So we have to find other solutions to support our children, prevent them at joining this ridiculous queue to see mental health services.
Do you think, Alex, for people listening, and like you're hitting home, there's no doubt we're hitting home what we're talking about today. Guys, listen to us, maybe young guys. Should they go straight to a professional because that's easier because there's that removal of familiarity, or we're always it's one of the most used lines, talk to somebody, but that's not always easy.
No, and sadly we know that men and young men are 9 to 10 times more likely to take their own lives than their female counterparts, and that is absolute fact. What we need to do, I think, is to instill an understanding that actually, yes, talking is important, but talking to the right people as well. And I think my advice to anyone that's struggling, no matter what level of struggle that may be, you need to have one person in your friendship or family life that you can talk to, one person in your workplace, uni or school that you can talk to, and one healthcare professional. And if you have those 3 kind of broad circles, a person in each place that's your point of contact that you've talked to, that you're supported by, that's aware of how you feel, it's a really good start to actually building back again. And I would say to anyone talking, oh gosh, yeah, a problem shared is a problem halved. And one of the hardest things to do, and the biggest parts of getting on the road to recovery, to feeling better again, is taking that first step. And that first step is actually self-awareness. And then the next step is actually speaking to someone about it and making something happen. And it isn't easy. I think the other problem is we make self-care and well-being is kind of sold as like this easy thing and it's all fluffy. It isn't easy. It's actually really hard at times. If you're so anxious that you can hardly open your front door, going out for a walk is actually really, really difficult. So start with the basics. Practice more self-compassion, allow yourself a bit of a breathing space when you have hard days, and commit to working hard. Look at the fundamentals. Sleep. Everyone needs to sleep well generally. Have a bit of movement in the day, have a bit of natural light, feel that they have a sense of purpose, have a good or reasonable connection with people in their lives. Those are kind of some of those key fundamentals. And if you can work a little bit each day at each of those things, over time you'll get a benefit. If you add on top therapy or talking therapy, if you need that, with medication if you need that as well, all those pieces of the jigsaw come together to build your bigger picture of your overall health. And that, I hope, is a takeaway that young people take from the book, is that when your back's against the wall and times are tough, it's knowing what's in your toolkit and what you can use, what you can bring together, that will all, as a whole bigger picture, help your mental health.
Well, Dr. Alex George, fair play to you. I mean, you speak very passionately about it, and I'm not surprised that A Better Day, your positive mental health handbook, is doing so well. I'd imagine it's going to do very well over here as well.
There's lots of tips if you go follow. Actually, Dr. Alex, you'll find you'll have to join the millions because there's quite a few on your Instagram account. But there's lots of tips there. Before we let you go, just whether it was the reality show you're on or the reality shows in general, I'm sure you get asked this a lot. What was your experience of, we all read about it in media, but very few of us are actually involved in these shows. Is there levels of care for contestants and all these kind of shows? Are TV companies more aware of it now, do you think?
I think there's no doubt. I mean, there's been a huge change. I mean, when I was on the show 4 or 5 years ago, I actually think, to be honest, I can only speak from my experience. My actual care was actually really good, but that also is because I said, look, I actually would really appreciate some therapy after the show, and they organised it like physically the next day. I was in touch with someone, but what they've now worked on and that has changed drastically. I think it's probably the gold standard now for any reality TV, is that you can't wait for other people to come to you if you're struggling, because the people that, especially men who are really struggling with their mental health, they will sit there quietly and they won't ask for help. So the people that come to you aren't the people that necessarily want to go away and do something horrendous like take their own life. So and now so much of the shows are about the vetting process before and the psychological process that you go through to increase the chances as best as possible this person can cope with what it will be like, and aftercare. So, you know, making sure you've got a set number of sessions where someone will be speaking to someone who is trained, who's a professional, to look out for struggles or signs that person isn't doing well or needs extra help, and that's so important. But I do think, you know, we have to, you know, a big part of what these shows need to do, and I think again it's something that is improving, people need to understand what they're letting themselves in for. And until you've lived it, you won't know. I can't tell you how strange it is to go from being someone that is unknown to the public to someone that is, you know, known. And in 9 weeks, it's generally a very, very odd experience. And I don't think anyone could ever explain fully what that's like, but you can give an idea. And I think, you know, there is an element of responsibility on the individual as well. You know, these are adults going on these shows generally. You have to weigh up, you know, do you know what? Am I prepared for the fact that this isn't going to be the dream I thought it was going to be, that it's going to be really tough, and that actually I might struggle. I mean, you have to have a reality check a little bit and ask yourself, are you prepared for the hard times? You know, it's not all glitz and glamour. It's a big part I talk about in my book and things. You know, you see all these highlight reels on social media. It's really hard. I mean, I don't think it's easy to be anyone in this world right now. It's quite hard. And that includes people in positions where they're influencing or whatever. So, honest pictures and reflections of what it's actually like is very important. So when people go on these shows, it's with a more realistic view of what it might be like.
Good to talk to you, Dr. Alex. Best of luck with the book. It sounds like it's going to be, it's already a hit. It sounds like it's going to be something that everyone can get something from.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for talking about something so important on the show as well.
No problem.
No worries.
Take care, guys. Thank you.